Hello and welcome to my video today. This is a follow-up to my previous video where I did the rear bumper removal so that I could access the wiring harness and connectors back there and to do waterproofing. So today I'm going to be removing the front bumper and I'm going to have a look at the wiring connectors inside that area. So let's get started. Here's a quick rundown of what I'm going to be doing today. I'm going to be opening the hood. I'm going to detach this section right here, this lighting assembly. I'm also going to loosen up some of the wheel well areas. And then I have a bunch of bolts that I need to remove underneath the bumper and also in this area right here. I'm going to get started with that. But first I want to show you what tools and supplies are needed for this project. A ratchet wrench with an 8mm and 10mm sockets. We also have some trim clips, so I recommend getting a metal trim removal tool like this one, and also to help remove some sections of the trim and bumper cover, this plastic pry bar is helpful too. Also recommend work gloves, rubber gloves. For cleaning the connectors, I recommend either this QD electronic cleaner. You may need some canned air to blow out any debris that are in the connectors. Also for the actual weather sealing, recommend a pair of scissors for trimming. I used silicone tape. You could also use butyl sealing tape, which also works well for waterproofing. And then wrapping either of these in wire loom. This will protect the outer area because these tend to be sticky, so you don't want anything to get on them. So putting this adds an extra layer of protection over the water seal. So that's what you need. So let's go out to the car and get started. So let's open up the hood. So this is the assembly that I need to remove. If there's anything in the way, those things need to be removed. For example, I have my jump starter kit right here. I am going to take off the zip ties and move it out of the way. We have a wiring connector here that attaches to the light fixture. We're going to remove that. You can either use a plastic pry bar, or it may be just loose enough if you press the tab, pull it out, and move it out of the way. Since I have my modification for the lighting, I'm going to need to remove this wiring so that this assembly can be taken out. Now I'm going to use the ratchet with the 8mm socket and remove the 4 bolts that are here, 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 and here. They're easy to see because they have this plastic section that's holding this on. There are 2 more bolts that I need to remove right here and right here using the same 8mm socket. Now let's try lifting this up. There we go. Now separated. Now we have to remove the remaining bolts that hold the top of this on. There are 6 bolts here. These are 10mm right here. And then there's 2 more here this one, and this one that are 8mm. So let me take off the 8mm first. Now I'm going to swap my socket out for the 10mm. We are now done with the hood area, so let's move on to the wheels. For the left wheel well area, I found it easier to turn the wheel using the steering wheel all the way to the right so I get access in here. There are 2 push pins, these trim clips right here, and then there's one on the top. So let's take these out with the trim removal tool. And now up top. One thing to notice, the trim clip that goes up here is shorter than the 2 down below. So just make sure when you're putting everything back together that you do the same clips in the same locations. Now we need to remove 3 bolts here, here, and here. These are using the 8mm socket. So the left wheel well is done. I'm going to repeat the same thing on the right side. I'm not going to show you the video, but it's exactly the same as this. Now we're ready to work on the bumper. There are 4 bolts. They use the same 8mm socket that I used in other areas. One is here, 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 and here. So let me take those out right now. And now for the last 2 trim clips that we need to remove. We need to loosen this piece here. The fender trim that we removed the bolts from is now loose, so I can pry that up just by pulling on it gently. And behind that is another trim clip. Now I have all of the bolts and trim clips removed, so the bumper can be taken off at this point. Make sure that the fender trim here is lifted away so that we have access to the bumper here. And what we're going to be doing is pulling this area out first, and then the rest of the bumper can be removed. I also recommend using something to support the bumper if you're doing this by yourself. I'm using 2 plastic pails on the front. Now I'm going to gently pull the bumper away from the body. All right, so I got this loosened up until about that section right there. All right, so we got about half of it removed. I'm gonna go to the other side and do the rest. All right, at this point, the entire top of this is loosened up. I have access to get behind here. So this is the area that I did in a previous video where I waterproofed the connectors behind here by the pedestrian speaker and the 3 connectors that are near the windshield washer fluid tank. So those are there. I'm not gonna disconnect those because they're already waterproofed at this point. I'm just gonna leave this right here. Now, there's additional areas if you want to waterproof. There are the ultrasonic sensors in the front, here, 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 and here. If you want to waterproof those, go right ahead. In addition, I see one connector right up here. Let's see. Yeah, there's actually 2 on each side, one on this side and one on this side if you want to waterproof those connectors. Otherwise, we have the radiator in the middle here. And I'm gonna do an inspection down below, see if there's anything else I need to access. I still think for these connectors in this area, the best way to access them is to take the wheel off and remove the wheel well lining out of the way so you can access those. I think that's still the superior way, but for any reason you need to take the bumper off to reach anything, this is what you would need to do. Like I said, I'm gonna look at any connectors in here and waterproof them. And I'm not gonna fully take the bumper off like I mentioned because it is attached at this corner to a couple of the wiring harnesses. So this is not gonna be coming off right now. But if you did want to, you could swing the bumper out this way to get access into the center. Just make sure you don't put any pressure on the wiring in this corner right here. I moved even more of the bumper out of the way so you can see closer. There is the connectors that I previously done the waterproofing on. You can see the bumper bar here, crash structure. Actually not a whole lot in there. There are some wires that are going through the front here, and it's mostly for the ultrasonic sensors that go across the bumper. We have a connector here, connector here, and you can see the ultrasonic sensors going along this side too. It's actually not a whole lot up in this area that I was expecting to see. But it is good to know how to access it. When I pull the bumper out, you can see on the inside that there are all of the wires that lead to the ultrasonic sensors. So if you want to waterproof them, one right here, here, there, and also here. And then in the very front, you can see right there is the camera. There's an additional clip that's further inside the wheel well area that you have to remove, and that will let the bumper go from the wheel well. So now I can move this outward this way. By the way, the one on the other side, I'm not going to detach because there's the wire connectors that are already weatherproofed and I don't want to mess with them. So now I can swing this out and see what it looks like. Now I have much better access to waterproof all of the connectors. In fact, I have done the waterproofing on all 6 of the ultrasonic sensors that are inside the bumper cover area and also the camera. There's one more connector that is right in the center here, right there, and that's the last one I want to check. I'm going to weather seal from the bottom here all the way to the top. Okay, at this point, I've weatherproofed all of the components that I could find in the bumper area. I have the ultrasonic sensors. There are 6 of those, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have the camera right here. And we have that other sensor that's right in the center. So that's everything I could find. At this point, I am going to put everything back in its original position and close up the bumper. Oh, by the way, I went inside and I checked, and all of the sensors seem to be working correctly according to the driver screen. When putting the bumper back on, make sure when you put the bumper cover on, this rubber piece, this surround goes inside and doesn't get caught coming outside of these openings. Because if you don't have it going inside like that, it's not going to correctly mount and the holes will not line up. So just to help you get this inserted, make sure that that rubber is inside of these holes. So here we go. We have the bumper put back together. All the components, screws, trim clips are all back in place. As you can see, it looks like it did before I started. Compared to the rear bumper, yes, this was quite a bit more work, I think, since I had to open the hood, I had to remove the lighting here, and a lot more bolts than the rear bumper. So yeah, I would allocate more time to do this than the rear. I was able to waterproof all of the connectors. I did 6 ultrasonic, the camera, and also the radar. So it's probably worth doing if you get the chance, because if any of those connectors do go bad, it can cause you some serious problems, and you don't want to have to go through that in an emergency type of situation. Like most things with this car, if we can get all of these things fixed ahead of time, as far as waterproofing goes, I think the car will be pretty reliable as far as that goes. In fact, my car has been super reliable. I have not had any problems with any water intrusion in any of my connectors, but I still want to be careful and make sure they're protected for the future. That's about it. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.